The Pickens plan officially arrives in Congress for debate this week. John Hofmeister is the former president and CEO of Shell's U.S. operations. And, John, this is going to be a big week for big oil and for the Pickens plan when it comes to Congress. Why don't we start talking a little bit about the Pickens plan, if you think it's a good idea and if you think it's going to get approval or get passed through Congress?
Well, I think the Pickens plan, as it's been described to me, is actually a very good use of natural gas. It would be an incentive for people to either buy new trucks, I think it's really new trucks, maybe convert some old trucks away from diesel in terms of using compressed natural gas. We have a lot of gas in this country. We need new markets for that gas. It would help the price of the gas if we did have such a market, but it's not an instant fix. It's going to take a while. But I know Boone Pickens has been working very hard with both houses trying to get this idea some grounding in Congress, and maybe this is its time.
You think it actually gets passed this time around?
I think there's a good chance of it. I know that I've had a conversation with Boone about this, and he and Harry Reid have talked about it quite a bit. Other members of Congress. Boone's been very active on this for a long time. The American Gas Association, I'm sure, would like to see something like this come through. So maybe the ducks are in a row.
If you're worried about some sort of a sticking point, what would it be?
Well, it could be that the incentive, the financial incentive to purchase new trucks could be a sticking point. In other words, with a Congress that is riddled with deficits, more taxpayer subsidy for the purpose of purchasing trucks, a tax credit or what have you, could hang people up. We'll see.
In terms of our plans right now as a nation, where we stand with energy and what you think needs to be done, where are the biggest holes?
Well, the biggest hole right now is the regulatory environment that this administration is putting on the hydrocarbon industry. You can't drill in the Gulf of Mexico. You can't get a mining permit in Kentucky, West Virginia for coal mining. That's where I am right now. And, you know, the regulatory environment is something beyond the scope of Congress. So the Congress may not even understand or know full well the starvation, and I use that word deliberately, the starvation that the regulatory environment is now putting on the future of hydrocarbon production. It's as if we don't need hydrocarbons, and we know we do. So we're really gearing up for a high-priced environment. Wind and solar are helpful, but they're not going to replace hydrocarbons, and we don't see the kind of leadership out of the executive branch that I think we need to balance out our energy future. It's all about what's new, when we need more of what's old. And we're going to need it for a very long time.
John, what's even more disturbing, because it's happening at the same time, since the election, I've read 3 or 4 major pieces in things like the Wall Street Journal or even the New York Times that anyone betting on subsidized, clean, alternative energy, that you can't count on the subsidies anymore, that Congress is going to be, you know, they're going to be very stingy about funding anything that can't exist economically on its own, which none of these can at this point, that they're not going to fund them. So we're not going to do anything about regulations, keep us from the old energy technology, and there's not going to be any funding for the new.
Well, I agree with that, Joe, and I think that without a way towards profitability, which doesn't yet exist in the new energy field, they only can exist with taxpayer subsidy. That's why we need a balanced portfolio, why I've been saying for years now we need more access to hydrocarbons. We've got to find cleaner ways to do hydrocarbon business. That's all possible. I was in a mine yesterday in eastern Kentucky, and you'd be amazed at the technology that is being used that is never talked about in Washington. But yet they are being stifled for every permit that they're trying to get, and they're really going to run out of work if we can't get permits to produce more coal, keep our lights on. I don't know that the administration either understands what they're doing or cares what they're doing, but the people here in eastern Kentucky certainly do.
John, this is something you've talked about for years, but I don't think I've ever heard you this exercised. It sounds like you are much more frustrated than you have been in times past when we've spoken with you.
When you read what's being written now about the Gulf of Mexico and the inability to get permits, and when you see the Presidential Commission make expressions like, this is a systemic problem across the entire Gulf, that's just nonsense. And I'm really trying to get more outspoken as time goes on, because practical, everyday people need affordable energy. They need it now. They need it later. They need it a decade from now. And this administration is looking at ways in which they can somehow satisfy certain constituents, but not care about all the thousands of people that have been laid off on the Gulf Coast. You had candidates, Democratic candidates, lose seats in the last election because of the moratorium. And, you know, that is the kind of back-of-the-hand treatment that the Gulf Coast is receiving from this administration. I think it's wrong, and I'm going to keep talking about it.
Well, John, we hope you will join us back here in studio sometime soon to talk a little more about it.
I hope so, Becky.
Okay. John, thank you for your time. Again, John Hofmeister. And a quick programming note for you. Wil Pickens will be joining us live tomorrow.